Today we're going to talk about building custom monsters. In order to have this conversation swiftly, we're going to assume that you know how to read a monster stat block. If you're unsure, check out episode 3 of season 2, Encounters and Stat Blocks. There are things I really like about 5th edition monsters. They are very universal. A single monster can be used at any level. ACs are kept relatively low, hit points and damage go up. This means you can easily pull one of the greatest power play switcheroos in gaming, where what was once a boss or a difficult encounter is now the shock trooper. They fought one orc at level 2, now orcs make up the bulk of the army. That orc did not change in its stats, and is still acceptable to be fought by that higher level player. But because of this openness, it seems like they've left out the tactics part in the monster manual. There's plenty of inspiration. It might tell you what the creature eats, what its home might be like. It may even go into how it makes its initial approach, particularly if it's a stealthy monster. But once you get into the stat block, it's not going to tell you how you should use these abilities. Let's take, for example, an open source monster, Night Hag. Night Hag has several spells, like Magic Missile, Plane Shift, Ray of Enfeeblement, and Sleep. If it's part of a Hag Coven, it now has access to Identify, Ray of Sickness, Hold Person, Locate Object, Bestow Curse, Counterspell, Lightning Bolt, Phantasm Killer, Polymorph, Contact Other Planes, Scrying, and Eye Bite. With a Coven attached, the Night Hag challenge rating 5 goes to a challenge rating 7. That challenge rating is assuming you're going to use all the abilities that are available to it. If you don't take the time to read through all those spells, prepare which ones you're going to do in what order, your turns are going to look something like the only action available. Claw, a melee weapon attack that does about 13 damage. This is to say that the challenge rating of a monster is only equal to your understanding of their kit, their abilities. If you're not going to use Phantasm Killer as an opener, that Night Hag isn't as imposing. If you understand and make use of all these spells, you could now very well have a boss on your hands. So when you come across these more complex creatures that have more than just actions, actual spell lists, think about their successful everyday activities. A Night Hag wants to feast on dreams. So in a 1v1 sort of situation, they might lead with Sleep. How are they going to get that 1v1 situation against your party? Things like Phantasmal Killer, Polymorph could whittle down the numbers, and then they do the sleep and move in and get their feast on as they normally would. It takes more planning, more understanding to make this hag a boss encounter. If you were to whip out the Night Hag as a random encounter as they move through a swamp, there's a very high likelihood that you're not going to succeed in giving them an on-challenge encounter. Challenge ratings are entirely subjective. And it's not only on the side of the players, though they might have a poorly balanced party, missing a tank, missing a healer. They might be missing range damage. It also comes down to your own understanding and your own capabilities as DM. And I'm here to tell you that these spells are messy. They always have been. Spell casting in Dungeons & Dragons is a random Harry Potter hodgepodge. And it's up to you to decide how these things fit together. Why is the hag contacting other plane and scrying? How does Phantasm Killer work alongside Lightning Bolt? And so your brain says, I want to use this monster as a boss, but it's too complicated. I'm going to try making my own monster, or adjusting this monster for my party. So you head on down to your Dungeon Master's Guide, and you find Creating a Monster. And the first big table you come across is Monster Statistics, by challenge rating. How are you supposed to use this table when our Night Hag increased its challenge rating just by getting access to more spells? But this is under the section, Creating Quick Monster Stats. How difficult can it be? By step 4, you're asked to create a final challenge rating, which is a combination of defensive challenge rating plus offensive challenge rating. So you say, you know what? I don't really care about making my own monster anymore. I'll just use the Night Hag even though I don't really know how to run her. You can ignore all this challenge rating business. The whole point of a challenge rating calculation is if you are going to publish this monster on D&D Beyond or through your own means, and you would like for it to have an attached accurate XP. Call me a filthy casual, but it is perfectly fine for you to just assume the challenge rating of your monster based on that initial table. You do not need to do calculations. 1,800 XP is perfectly fine for your level 5 party. If you're not going to put it online, who cares? And frankly, this entire section is blocking you from all the other good stuff. Dive past that, and you'll find out how to actually make a monster statistic block with the size, alignment, ability scores, armor class, you name it, everything you need to actually run your own home made-up monster. And by using that initial monster statistics by challenge rating table, you can get just about everything you need. You're going to get your proficiency bonus, which you will need to add to your strength or dex modifier for your basic attacks. You can say right here that I'm going to double that proficiency bonus for a natural weapon. You want to make a T-Rex with a bite attack? It's pretty damn good at making a bite attack. Let's double the proficiency bonus and call it done. Your armor class, which you can add shields and other types of armor on top of if you want the monster to be more difficult or equipped. You can get your basic hit points, which here is listed as a range. For our level 5, 131 to 145. Do you feel your creature is very healthy? Less healthy? You can go about this doing the full-blown hit dice calculation. That's based on size, which is right there below all of this crazy business about what to give XP for what challenge rating. Tiny creatures always have a hit die of a D4. Gargantuan creatures always have a hit die of D20. Next, you got your attack bonus. You don't even have to go through and decide that strength, that dexterity modifier. You could even use this attack bonus as the modifier for those skills should someone cast a spell on you that requires you to make that kind of save. And here at the end is where the information is really valuable to expand on your cool ideas. The damage per round. How much damage pressure should your challenge rating based monster be applying to the enemy, the players? And a save DC, which means you can make any spell up you want. You could have a finger cannon that shoots baby lizards wearing hats. The save DC on that for our 5 challenge rating monster would be 15. We could say being hit by that stream of lizards does 33 damage. We've got just about everything we need already outside of speed, senses, languages, intelligence, and all that sort of idea. In those cases, you can simply say, well, it says intelligent as a griffin. Just grab the griffin. What vulnerabilities, resistances, and immunities does it have? Find an alike monster and apply those right in. But you want to make your monster special. You want to make it feel like a boss. And you go to monster features, and these are all very, very tame. It gives you the example of adding ambusher to your creature. But all that means is that the creature's effective attack bonus is +1. That's not as interesting as our hag that was feasting on dreams. Where do I get stats for that? What is the DC for those sort of crazy things? There isn't one. Despite all these crazy calculations that you can do to make an official monster, the really cool stuff you'd like to do is uncalculatable. So make it yourself. And if you went too big, it ended up being a lot harder than you expected, then you just give more XP. You were going to give a challenge rating 5, 1,800 XP. You decide after it's over, you're going to give 2,900. No big deal. And it doesn't matter because you're telling a good story. And in a good story, game mechanics don't matter. And challenge rating doesn't matter. A mechanic missed still counts for XP. Players know they're going to fight a night hag who wants to put them to sleep, so they go to the elves and get enchanted to not sleep for a week. They did it. They fought the sleep mechanic without interacting with it. In their minds, it was likely more deadly, more imposing, and more powerful than it may have actually been mechanically with the sleep spell usage. Players feel rewarded. They get full XP. I encourage you to truly be a game designer and not limit yourself by the book's understanding of balance. That ambusher trait doesn't go far enough. Adding a breath weapon doesn't go far enough. If you want to make a cool boss, really think about what you can add to the game that is going to challenge your players based on their party. We already have all the numbers we need. We know the base damage that something should deal per round, and we know the save DC that the players will have to roll to get through. Nothing is stopping you from saying 30 damage a round. Well, why don't I take 15 of that into the claw attacks of my monster, and the other 15 is a horrible aura dealing necrotic damage if the players are inside of it. And we call that a power pie. It is the whole pie, a pie graph, but we're dividing up the power into different sections, making sure that it all makes one total that is still in a balanced range. Game designing is fun, and that joy is going to be shared by your players if you can make it functional using these statistics. And I have a favorite custom monster that I've built repeatedly, edition to edition. And it comes from my desire to make that night hag more than she was, and not just a collection of random spells. I wanted to Freddy Kruegerify her, have her stalk players through their dreams, dealing real damage. I wanted to combine a mechanic from Burning Crusade World of Warcraft in the Kelagos fight. And I play with a very large party, about 8 people. So I made a fight where the Night Hag has to be defeated in both the dream world and the real world at the same time. Defeating just one or the other doesn't do the trick, and the two's health pools are linked. If the dream form Night Hag takes 15 damage on its turn, and the real world Night Hag takes 30 damage on its turn, then each of those creatures take only 15 damage because they're linked. How do you add a challenge rating to that? You don't, but you understand that a challenge rating 5 is made for 4 level 5 players, so we take that health pool total suggested and we split it among 2 creatures. This damage mitigation mechanic does increase the DC, but that doesn't matter, because we're going to give XP based on how it felt for the players when it's over. But that custom monster is entirely based on my need to create a fight that splits my party, that allows a group of 8 to feel like they're fighting a single monster without just surrounding and wailing on it. So here with a custom monster, as long as we obey the basic balance, the power pie of this initial table, we can do anything we want. And use this opportunity to create a truly memorable boss that is handcrafted for your players. Now, the catch here, of course, is that we don't want to be vengeful DMs. We don't want to create something made to counter our players. So when I ask, what's your players' movement like? Are there any opportunities to create a cool mechanic out of the way they move? We're thinking about, do they like to stand still a lot? Do they like dashing? Is there certain players who want to move more? Well, then having an aura that punishes, gives damage. We take from that power pie 5 damage for every square you move during a fight. That could be interesting. But if we say, well, you're going to take 15 damage of our 30 power pie if you use a teleport, and there's only one character using teleports, but they're always kind of butts about it. They're a little proud of themselves and always making trouble. Well, that's countering a single player. Think about your player's range. Do you have strictly melee players who maybe can damage a boss, but then open up a weakness for the range players to take advantage of, or vice versa? How big is your party? What's their average damage per round? What's their average hit points? Do they have a lot of healing? Do they put out large healing amounts? Could you make a Valithria Dreamwalker-like fight, where the players are basically racing to heal the boss? Or even are they fighting a boss that could be destroyed only by healing it, cleansing it in that way? Do you want to have mechanics that force players to stand far apart or stand close together? Do you want to force movement? In this case, you could have bubbles appear under their feet if they're having a fight in the swamp, and the next turn, there's a great water spout that would knock them down and deal damage. Do you only want the fight to go a certain number of rounds, basically have a timer on it? Do you want a dangerous stacking damage aura? All of these mechanics can be figured out just by using the damage per round statistic and deciding what your monster's power pie is going to be like. You want ads? Take them from the health point pool. Divide up the damage per rounds. Give them the same attack bonus. Give them the same spell DC. And the jump we make to a great game designer is one who allows their players to learn these lessons ahead of time. You want that water spout forced movement? Let them experience that from a lesser enemy. You want them to use a special staff to nullify the boss's invincible shielding? Well, they're going to have to learn that somewhere. Could be through an NPC lore dump, could be through fighting lesser creatures with less stakes. Don't let the Dungeon Master's Guide be a limiting factor for you and what you can create. There's also the amazing added bonus that when you create the monster, you know how to play it. And that expertise will certainly show when you run it. All the more important with bosses who need to throw down and show their power in a very small window. Thank you for listening to today's episode of DM Gives Inspiration. I would love to hear what sort of boss or monster mechanics you have created or would like to create based on your favorite video games, movies, books, or just a cool idea you've had. You can shoot those over at kylefergusson.com using the contact link, or you can join the Discord there on the website. Music was by Brian Griffith, and you can support this show over at patreon.com/KyleFergusson. I'll see you next week.